Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to day two of our Faith at Work 5-day virtual event. And I am so excited that you chose to join us today. Uh, and I'm Bobby Albert with Values Driven Culture. Before I introduce our guest speaker today, I want to mention that our guest speaker today will be giving every attendee a free gift at the end of this main session before we go into our VIP backstage Q&A session. And uh, if you have you purchased your VIP backstage pass yet? Well, at the end of today's main session, our only VIP backstage pass holders will be ushered backstage to our special VIP backstage Q&A session with Rick Boxx. And every day this week, the VIP pass holders will get backstage access with our feature speaker. And you can click if you haven't got that pass yet, you can click the link that'll be in the chat window, or you can simply go to bobbyalbert.com/VIP and to purchase yours now. And one thing I want to mention, and this is important, at least to me, is that all the proceeds that are collected will be donated to our guest speaker's nonprofit organization. So now I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker today is Rick Boxx. And Rick is a pioneer in in the Faith at Work movement, and he's the CEO of Unconventional Business. Rick, who's a close friend of mine, and his wife Kathy as well, and his his team are committed to cultivating, get this, man, this guy's a visionary, 1 million vibrant business leaders modeling biblical principles in the workplace by 2030. Boy, that is a huge vision. And one thing couple of things I want to mention about Rick. Rick is also on more than 200 radio stations daily with his popular integrity moments. And if you've ever heard them or read them, they're excellent. Every one of them are. And he's been the author of 6 books. And this is also interesting. He's a CPA. And he and his wife, Kathy, have 3 grown children and 2 grandkids, which he was telling me earlier. Kathy is real busy playing with them. So, Rick, welcome to Faith at Work.
Hey, thanks, Bobby. Thanks for having me on here. This is exciting.
Well, Rick, I understand that your topic today is, get this, what is an unconventional business? And now, before we get into that, I also understand that you have an interesting story about how the Lord used you to start Unconventional Business Network. And could you take 30 seconds and just share that story with us?
Well, actually, I started the ministry with the name Integrity Resource Center in 2001. And at our 15-year anniversary, Bobby, I just felt led to get away on a day-long prayer retreat and just ask the Lord what he was expecting for the next 15 years. And as I did, about the only thing I heard all day that day was out of Isaiah 42 that says, "Behold, the former things have come to pass. Now I declare new things. Before they sprout, I proclaim them to you." And I went away from that day knowing that something new was about to happen, but I didn't have a clue what it was. I just knew I needed to keep my eyes and ears open to see what was going to happen. And shortly after that, There was a business executive that had been volunteering some time to do some consulting work with us. And kind of out of the blue, he said, you know, Rick, that book you wrote called Unconventional Business, it's a much better brand than Integrity Resource Center. Have you ever thought about changing your brand? And my immediate reaction was, absolutely not. I've had this brand for 15 years. It's too hard to change a brand. I don't think I want to go that way. And he just looked me in the eye and he said, aren't you willing to at least pray about it? And that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And so I took some time to pray about it. And within about 2 weeks' time, I had three major stakeholders in the ministry, all separate of each other, call me with the exact same idea. And I'm not real bright, but if God keeps whacking me enough times, I usually get it. And so we went on the journey of changing the brand to Unconventional Business Network and started to morph into doing more things to help build a network and to build small leadership community groups and things that will help people connect in community as well as gaining insight from content.
Yeah, sometimes we really need God to whack us on the head a couple of times to get the message. I've
No, I do.
experienced that too. I think that's the reason why I've got some bumps on my head. I'm a hard-headed German. Uh, uh, Now, Rick, could you talk on one of the points of interest that you like to share today about what is an unconventional business?
Yeah, well, I guess just to start, I mean, that phrase oftentimes catches people's attention because they're curious and they wonder what that means. And in simplistic terms, I would say that there's God's way of doing business and there's the world's way of doing business. And the unconventional business approach is doing business God's way. And if you think about it, Isaiah 55:9 talks about, for as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And I think God's ways are so profound and they're so creative that when we're willing to be in alignment with God's ways, then we can do business in an unconventional way. But we have to have the courage to step in and do it because there's going to be a lot of people that ridicule you, that think that it's crazy that what you're trying to do. But when you do, that's when God shows up and does some remarkable things. And so I think that's a good starting place, is just for people to remember that God has a different way of doing business and he wants us to go his way.
You, uh, you know, um, uh, I, the I understand you got a story about Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. So if you remember, Truett Cathy was the founder of Chick-fil-A, and in 1946 he opened his restaurant. And back then there was a lot of what they called blue sky laws, and a lot of companies couldn't be open on Sundays, but some could. And he chose that he would rather spend his Sunday being able to go to church, worship God, and allow his employees the same thing. And so he chose to be closed on Sunday, made a conscious decision. And at that point in time, that wasn't that far out of the norm. But then the 1960s came, and he was opening up stores in shopping malls. Well, most malls actually have the ability to charge their tenants a percentage of revenue as part of their lease arrangement. And so they want you open all the time if they can get it. And so suddenly Truett's faith was being challenged because people were saying, no, if you want to come in here, you've got to be open 7 days a week. And so it caused him to pause and rethink that again. And he came back with the same stance that no, God's blessed us so far. I'm going to trust God that we're going to keep these stores closed. And they got turned away from some malls. But as people started to see how successful they were, other malls started taking them in and saying, okay, let's do this. And they just continued on that. And even before Truett passed away, it's my understanding that the family signed a covenant with him that even after his passing, that they would remain keeping all the stores closed on Sundays. And what's incredible about that And what shows you what an unconventional business approach looks like is so Chick-fil-A today, their average store grosses over $5 million a year with only being open 6 days a week. McDonald's, one of their closest competitors, only averages $2.5 million a year in revenue, and they're open 7 days a week. I think God's kind of blessed what Truett set out to do there, but it was a really unconventional approach that a lot of people have ridiculed the company over the years for that, but they've stood firm, and it's been a great example.
You know, that is truly a great story on doing things God's way for sure. It kind of makes me think several years ago, I was faced with, I was struggling with our business because I had invested pretty heavily in a new business idea and it didn't take off. And I was really struggling over that. But it finally came to me. This is kind of part of one of the the knots on my head is God hit me over the head and said, Bobby, I own this company and not you, and you are to be the steward. Well, of course, I went back to him and I said, well, hey, wait a minute now. I thought I owned the company. And he came back to me and said, no, I own this company and you are to be the steward. Well, okay, here we go. And it was very quickly after that the Lord restored us financially and our business never did stop growing after that point. So even without that new venture that took us down a road, but uh, and by the way, hey, in the chat window, if any of y'all have had a key takeaway from what Rick just said, please share them in the chat window if you would. And Rick, I understand you even have another one of the points of interest that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I think there's kind of five traits that I talk about some of an unconventional business. And so I can hit a couple of those. But the first one I would say is you really need to be God led. It's the Spirit of God leading you and God's word leading you that is unconventional way of doing business. And so many times we look at things the world's way and we're not being God led. And so it's hard for us to be unconventional and have God's blessing if we're not God led. I think a good example of that is, we just talked about Chick-fil-A being closed on Sundays, but Hobby Lobby is another company that took that action, but they took the action after they were already open 7 days a week. And David Green talks about in one of his books how he was praying one day and felt challenged that the managers of his stores, even if they took one day off a week, the managers, because the store was open, oftentimes would get called in or they had the burden on their shoulders 7 days a week. And he really felt convicted and led by God to consider closing down their stores on Sundays. The only problem is like I said, he was already up and running. And he went to his accounting personnel and said, how much is this going to cost us? And they told him it was going to cost $100 million in revenue if he closed down on Sundays. Now, that'll make anyone gulp. And, do you really want to step into that? But he had the courage to step in and say, okay, let's do this. Now, he did step in at first and closed just a few states down as kind of a test. And he said, as he got in it, God was like, really? You're testing me? Just go ahead and get it over with. And so he did. He went ahead and jumped in and closed all of their stores on Sundays. And they lost some revenue that first year, but by the second year, things had rebounded dramatically and they saw the benefits. And they heard from their staff and their managers how relieved they were that they had a day off, that if they wanted to go worship God, they could. If they needed a day of rest, they had it.
Well, I believe you even have another maybe example. Robin, John,
Yeah,
even time. Yeah.
one of the other traits I think of an unconventional business is someone that's biblically centered, and they really try and stay focused on how would God have me do this, and what would the Bible teach me in how to do this. And there's a mutual fund company that I like, and actually I met one of the founders of it down in when I was in Dallas at a conference that we were hosting many years ago. And I remember meeting Robin John, and he was telling me that he and his partner were going to start this mutual fund company. And so, out of curiosity, I was asking him about his background, and he said, "Well, neither one of us have any background at all in mutual funds or investing. We just felt, led by God that we're supposed to go do this, but we want to do it from a biblically responsible approach. And we want to only be investing in companies that have similar values as to what we do." And I remember going away from that meeting saying, how is this guy going to get this business off the ground if he doesn't have any experience in it? But that business has flourished, and they have been true to looking for companies to invest in that only honor the values that they believe come out of the Bible. And by doing that, they've had great returns in their investment portfolios, and they've been able to honor God at the same time. And so, once again, there's an unconventional business buried in there that other people thought was a crazy idea, but God had different plans for them.
The Now, is Kingdom Advisors another unconventional business, or is that the same investing firm?
No, Kingdom Advisors is actually they're actually a nonprofit that Ron Blue started, and they have an interesting mandate. Is Ron Blue had been a financial advisor much of his life, and he kept seeing that the people that they would advise were extremely wealthy people, and that they would be, in essence, hoarding their money, investing it in the market. And a lot of them weren't all that generous, even if they were believers. And Ron just began believing that there could be a huge transformation in the financial services industry if someone started training them what a biblical approach looked like to investing. And so they started Kingdom Advisors, and they began training financial advisors, financial planners, people like that. And so many of them across the country now, we've got several of them that are friends of mine here in the Kansas City area. They, even though many get paid in that industry by how much they're investing for you, these people have been trained to ask you the hard questions about, well, what are you going to do now that you've accumulated more wealth than you can spend? And you've got all this excess, aren't you going to consider generosity? So they're really helping people with philanthropy and honoring God in the way that they use their money. And these financial professionals are honoring God in how they're coaching their clients to look at money differently than what most financial advisors might teach them.
So, also, do you have another story on about Hobby Lobby and their people over profits to share with us?
Yeah, I do. So, one of the other traits I think of an unconventional business is they recognize that people are more important than profits. Now, we all realize to stay in business, you have to be profitable, or otherwise you're going to go out of business and you're not going to have any people. But whenever, push comes to shove and you have to make some tough decisions, I think, when Jesus taught about love your neighbor as yourself, you should be considering how you care for people. And that's a big challenge for a lot of businesses as to how do we look out for them. And so Hobby Lobby hires a lot of people that could be hired in at minimum wage. And once again, along the way, they decided to make a decision on how can we better care for the staff that we have. And so they went ahead years ago and raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour in all of their stores, even though all the competing stores out there were getting by with paying $8 to $10 an hour. And so it cost them money in the bottom line profit, but they believed it was a calling that they needed to honor and do, and that they needed to reveal that they sincerely believed that people were over prophets. And so I think there's a lot of examples like these stories we've been talking about today, but basically they all boils down to God has an unconventional way for us to do business, and he wants us to prayerfully consider what those ways are and take a look as to how to implement in our business.
Yeah, you kind of remind me, this is kind of a takeaway for me. What you were saying is, and you've heard, my story about the culture we built in our own company, me seeing my work as a ministry instead of a job, going all the way back to 1987. And uh, one thing I didn't realize, the power of that ministry, but our workplace, our employees really felt that Bobby Albert really cares for me.
Mm.
And uh, in fact, when I sold my company uh, in 2011 to a publicly traded company, if you had walked around our place of business, our employees would have talked with you as though they own the company and not Bobby Albert. And you just can't buy that stuff.
Right.
You can't buy that stuff. And I begin to learn that like you said earlier, you're in business for profits or to get results. And but I begin to learn through the ministering to our people that it was the people that gave us the results, and they gave us profitability that was unheard of in our industry. It wasn't because Bobby Albert was so smart, because hey, I'm from Texas. I'm a simple man with a simple mind. And so it really was our people that made the difference. And so, hey, in the chat window, if there was something that Rick said there that was a takeaway for you, please share them in the chat window. And Rick, do you have any final thoughts you would like to leave for our audience today?
I would say, Bobby, the main one is that becoming an unconventional business can really be challenging. I mean, you will get ridiculed at times. You will be asked by the Lord to do some things that may not make any sense at all to you and can be very frightening. But when we obey God's calling and we're grounded in his word and we know that we're on the right path because he's leading us, then we can see some incredible results. But they're only going to come through God and from us surrendering everything to him and letting him have control over that business. And it reminds me of what, Joshua, early on in Joshua, whenever he was having to take the Israelites, these grumbling Israelites, into the promised land, he was scared to death because he was following in the footsteps of Moses. And God encouraged him with Joshua 1:8 that says, "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous and achieve success." And I think that that's a good word for us if we're grounded in God's word and we're following God's lead, even when it doesn't make sense, then we can count on God for the outcomes and we don't have to worry about those. And so that's what I would encourage people listening in today. If you're trying to walk out your faith and integrate it into the day-to-day life of your business or work life, then it's challenging, but hang in there, do it anyway, and God will see you through it, and you'll never regret it.
Wow, Rick. Uh, I guess the challenge is are you unconventional, and would you like to be one? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you are out there and you're wondering, well, what does it really look like to be an unconventional business? We actually have a free assessment tool on our website that we have one for business owners and we have one for business leaders. And it's called a leading assessment. And you can take that for free. You'll get some results back. You'll get some great recommendations and some reading material that will help you with that. And we're providing that free. And you can just visit unconventionalbusiness.org and check out that business assessment. And I think it will show and reveal to you some things that you may not have considered before that the Bible teaches on how you practically apply some of its principles to the day-to-day business decisions.
Well, thank you, Rick, for the free gift that you're offering everyone today. One other takeaway, if I might mention, is you gave great examples of how business leaders of their companies see God looking at their life and seeing that every aspect of their life is sacred, not just when they go to church. And so that when they go to work, they can actually uh, they they will worship the Lord even at work, moment by moment, and how they take care not only the employees but also customers and suppliers as well. And so, thank you, Rick, for that. Uh, Before I introduce you to Bob Payton for some final instructions, there's a couple of things I'd like to share with you. Is to let you know that it's time for our special Q&A session with Rick. And if you don't have a VIP backstage pass yet, please click the VIP pass link in the chat window, or simply go to bobbyalbert.com/VIP. And once you purchase a VIP pass, we'll escort you to the special Q&A breakout rooms. And, I want to thank Rick Boxx and for each one of you who are here today. And I want to thank you so much for being part of our day 2 of our Faith at Work 5-day event. And let's show Rick our appreciation in the chat window, or just simply raise your hand, or, and for Rick today. And just one other thing I like to ask you here is that I want to learn from you if there's ways that we can improve the Faith at Work events. And just please contact me simply. You can email me directly. It's as simple as bobby@bobbyalbert.com. And hopefully you'll see my email address in the chat window. And our guest speaker tomorrow, which will be Wednesday, is Lee Truex, who is president of Fellowship of Companies for Christ International. Their organization is also known as FCCI, and he will talk about leveraging your eyes, in other words, the letter I, your eyes in the marketplace. So may God bless you as you integrate the Lordship of Jesus Christ into every area of your life, be it in your family or your church or in the workplace or in the marketplace. And with that, now I want to introduce you to Bob Payton for some final instructions.
All right. Thank you very much, Bobby and Rick Boxx. Sure appreciate your time and your insights that you shared with us today. Lots of great comments in the chat, and you can keep those coming, folks. As Bobby mentioned, the VIP backstage area is where him and Rick are headed next. And if you have purchased a pass to get back there, then you will be going back to that breakout room, and you'll see a prompt on your screen in just a moment that ask you to join the VIP backstage pass breakout room. And if not, if you would like to purchase that pass, all of the proceeds go to our speakers' nonprofit organizations this week. So you'll be making a donation to them, as well as getting access to the backstage pass area, where you can ask questions either through chat or verbally once we get back there. So for those of you who are joining us backstage, you're now going to see a prompt for that. Other than that, if you haven't and you're still in the main session, the meeting will be ending. Brady Bashir will be here. If you've got any questions, he'll continue to chat with you if you want to find out how to purchase that pass. Thank you very much for attending today.
As well as a daily email and podcast. It's called Integrity Moments. People appreciate it because I keep it 60 seconds. And so every day we have a practical workplace story with a biblical principle woven into each one of them. And so it's been a great entry point for people, and a lot of people use it as part of their devotional time in the morning. And so that's drawn a lot of people in. We also are known for our events in the Midwest and beyond sometimes. But so in Kansas City, St. Louis, and Des Moines, we do 3 major events a year in those cities. And we've done events in the past in Tulsa and Dallas. And then we've done a national summit event as well. And so we've done a lot of events. And in the last 3 years, we've really been ramping up having leadership community groups. We started realizing when we changed our brand that we really needed to have people have the opportunity to get connected with other like-minded believers from the marketplace. And so we've got groups for small business owners. We've got a group that we call forums that's for general business leaders, regardless of what role they serve. And then my wife started a division for us for professional women. And so we've got groups for each of those that enable people to plug in with like-minded people. And we have some great curriculum for each of those groups so that we're helping develop unconventional business leaders along the way.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
All right.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yep, we've got Doug standing by with a question. Go ahead, Doug. We've got you unmuted.
So one of the things that I see in my business, and I assume that most people are seeing in their business, is a new type of person coming into business. And this is the millennial as well as the Z generation. And they're quite different, at least from my perspective. And I'm wondering if you see a different way of ministering to them. And just from my point of view, here's what I know. And these are just facts. 47% of all white children are raised in single family homes now. Yeah. 75% of all Black children are raised in single family households now. So they don't have a father in the home. And I've seen it in many cases, they lack some of the disciplines that kids growing up with 2 parents, banging their heads when they get out of line. So I was wondering, and I've got a way that I'm doing and that I'm working with them, but I was wondering if you have seen this and how you are dealing with that.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest that I don't feel like I have very many answers in this. Matter of fact, we're bringing on an expert next month onto one of our Zoom programs specifically that's an expert in dealing with millennials and leading millennials in the marketplace. But I think it's trying to get to know them and understand them. And one of the key things I do know is especially the millennials, they are very driven by purpose. They want to have meaning in the work that they get engaged in. And so if you can help them connect the dots, because what I see is a lot of businesses throw someone on a frontline job or whatever, and they don't really do a great job of communicating to them how their job fits into the big picture of not only the business, but the big pictures of the society. And whenever you do, it's remarkable the difference that can be made. And so I think being mindful that the millennials are looking for a cause, they're looking for a purpose, and helping them see what that might be inside of your workplace can help them feel more connected. They'll be more engaged, and they'll be more fruitful employees. One of my favorite stories that I read in a Christian business magazine many years ago was a Christian guy that took over LensCrafter, the eyeglass people in the malls. He told the story that whenever he took over that business, he just had the mindset, if we just crank out more glasses, we'll make more money. And so that's kind of all that he preached to his managers until he went away on a weekend retreat with his church, and they were studying the healings of Jesus. And what struck him was many of the healings were people that were blind. And as he was meditating and praying over those passages that weekend, he felt like God was instructing him that I didn't send you to LensCrafter just to make a bunch of eyeglass frames and make a lot of money. I sent you there to give sight to people that are having trouble seeing. That simple phrase completely revolutionized his approach. He went back to the business the next week, called all of his managers in from around the country, and told them all that stuff I've been telling you about, just cranking out more eyeglasses and making more money. Please forgive me for that and forget that. He said, I want everybody to realize we have a very important purpose here. And in order to get it, he said, I want every store in the country to go to your local homeless shelter one day a year and take all of your staff members. And I want you to give eye test and free eyeglasses to people that are homeless, because I want our staff to know that we have a calling and a purpose here. And he said the strange thing that happened after all of that was he started to realize that they had become a lot more profitable. And he was trying to drill down to find out why that was. And he discovered that their turnover ratio, which in that kind of a retail world is usually extremely high, they discovered that their turnover ratio had plummeted. And when he went around and started talking to people in the stores, asking them why they were still there, 5-10 years later, he said he kept hearing from people, well, I can't leave here. I've got people to help. I'm helping people see. And he realized how big of an impact that had made on that business. And so that's a long story to share, but I do think that that's one thing we know about the millennials is they very much are cause driven. And the more you can help them connect to that, the better off you'll be.
Rick, if I can add to that, Gallup, they do a lot of research, and they surveyed, it was a massive survey a few years ago. They had surveyed over 85,000 companies and over 1 million employees. And they were, out of all of that data, there were 5 things that they came up with that employees are looking for. One of them was exactly what you were saying there. And it wasn't only for the millennials and the Generation Zs, it was for everybody. And what that was is, does this company stand for something?
Yes.
And that comes back to the purpose. I know in my own company, we had a purpose statement, but but what was even more important as me seeing my work as a ministry, this goes back into the early 90s, is I started talking with our people, and I don't know who was a Christian or not, and Rick, you've heard me bring this up. It's Colossians 3:23-24. And it says it in those 2 verses twice, that you are, whatever you do it with all of your heart, not unto men, but it's unto the Lord Jesus Christ. It's the Lord Jesus Christ you're serving. And so our employees, they heard from me at least 4 times a year when we had company-wide meetings, that when they came to work every day, they came to work to serve the Lord Jesus Christ and not Bobby Albert. And that's another way of signaling to our people that what was why did they come to work every day? And I think because they knew that is because we stood for something. In other words, when they served our customers, they knew that they were also serving the Lord Jesus Christ. And I tell you what, that's the reason why uh, we felt like that we did very well at, we use the term delighting our customers, and also it contributed to the profitability. Also, one of the other things that ties in what you said there, Rick, on that Gallup research is companies that did stand for something along with the other four things is that they had higher sales, they had lower turnover, like you mentioned, lower turnover, and like fewer people taking sick days off. There was a whole host of things, and there's some significant percentage increases or decrease in some things, like in the turnover, that was significant. And compared to all, compared to everyone else. So that really plays out well.
Yeah.
All right, let me jump back in. We've got a couple more questions. We've got one chatted in from Jason. We'll get to in just a minute, but we had promised Mike Davis. He's next. I think he's in Auburn, New York. A little cold up there today. So
Mike, little cold, little snowy. So I had a question. It's kind of a twofold thing. Internationally, they brought up Chick-fil-A, and immediately I thought of last week how the Chick-fil-A in England said that they were shutting down mostly due to pressure from the LGBT groups that had labeled them haters. And in my own town, where I work, I live in Seneca Falls, which is the birthplace of women's rights for you history buffs out there. And in Auburn, they're trying to remake that into history's hometown in this. They're trying to rewrite history and to make Abraham Lincoln look like he would have been for LGBT rights or something like that. I mean, anyways, there's a lot of pressure for businesses to signal to the crowd. I drove past another business that I know has a Christian president, and they had the gay pride flag out. And I'm like, how did that happen? And who's picking their engineer and architect by whether they have a gay pride flag out front or not? But my question is this: is Christian business owners, what are we to do? And like, do we put a statement of faith on our website, or does that label us, oh, he's a conservative Christian, he's a hater, and we're going to go somewhere else?
Well, great question. And we're in trying times that I think more of us are being challenged in how we approach things. And I think that we have to be prayerful and sensitive and remember to usually try and promote what we're for more than what we're against, and just let people know that we're for, people to live a peaceful and prosperous and healthy life, and the Bible has guidelines as to how to better do that, and try and walk that out carefully. But we always need to be respectful and love others, in spite of our difference in views. And so it's a challenging fine line. And there's times when, we're going to get backed in a corner, and you have to, just speak truth and love as far as what you believe. But I think you try and walk cautiously through it in a way that seems to be loving and honoring and respectful to all people, because we're all made in the image of God, while at the same time, not selling out on your beliefs, and being able to take a stand for what you do believe. And so it's, Bobby, you probably have some other ideas, but that's just what comes to mind to me.
Oh, you're right on target. And, hearing you talk, Rick, and hearing Mike ask the question, there's a famous author by the name of Jim Collins, and he's written, a book called Built to Last, another one called Good to Great. The Good to Great is the one that he's mainly known for. I've noticed he actually published that book over 20 years ago, and it's still, every once in a while, it'll still pop up in the top 10 book sales. And, but he had a principle that he discovered in all his research, because he was a Stanford professor, and it was to preserve the core and stimulate progress. And exactly what Rick was talking about, not in the first question, and in this, Rick, what you were talking about, you stand on the core principles, but you still move forward in stimulating progress. And it's so important that, especially here in America, we want to make popular decisions rather than the right decision. And I think there's more people than you really give credit for, that most people give credit for, is standing. It comes back to having a purpose for your organization. When people are employees, be it millennials or Generation Zs, and we're going to run out of the alphabet here soon, but they are hungry for somebody to stand for something and not be like the waves in the ocean. You get pushed this way, then you get pushed that way. And you're just, it's like, well, I don't know what he's really standing for. And a lot of this is kind of getting in a Christian perspective here, but is relativity. And people, in that area, people get confused because, and this is another principle that Jim Collins teach. It came to my mind. He's talking about the genius of the and rather than the tyranny of the or. And so what happens if our behavior is to make popular decisions, we think, okay, I'll be over here, and then it's an or next time I'm over here. And so people, especially as a leader, people do what people see. And if they see us as leaders, we're over here and then we're over there, it's like, well, I wish he would just stand for something. And it really confuses employees and even customers. Anyway, I don't have any more to add, but Rick, I think that was a good point there.
All right. Let me ask this next question that Jason Turner chatted in. What post-pandemic trends are you seeing that we should be watching as we strive to serve well in the marketplace, in the workplace? Rick, any thoughts on that?
Post-pandemic trends. Well, it doesn't feel like we're very far in the post stage yet, so it's kind of hard to see the trends. I would say one of the trends that we're going to be need to be aware of, and I think it fits with the question about millennials and Gen Zs, is fear. I think we're seeing generations that have more fear than we may be used to in the workplace. And I think we're going to have to be sensitive to that. And if you think about where they're coming from, these younger generations have been raised in a time when all they've known is crisis after crisis after crisis, and being told that everything is a big, big crisis. And so I believe that there's a lot of fear. And so that drives buying decisions. It drives big decisions that they make at work and at home, and being sensitive of that and realizing that that's going to impact some business decisions that we make with our customers. And so that's just one that comes to mind that I'm seeing out there more and more. And it's interesting to hear the mindsets of younger people compared to the mindsets of, say, baby boomers, for instance, in the marketplace right now are completely different. And part of it is driven by fear.
Yeah, if I might add, I see more and more people making, uh, this, I call it expedient type decisions. In other words, because they're driven by fear, they're more interested in short-term gain and what is it for me? And this is the reason why we hear all over the place, even on TV ads and stuff, is about the me or the I. And if you just think about it, we have an iPhone, we use iPads. There's a lot of eyes in all around us, and it's all about me. And it's a very self-centeredness that's all of this is driven by fear. And what happens, we get addicted to my entitlements. That's the reason why everybody's demanding their rights. It's like, what I'm entitled to this, I'm entitled to that. And they're trying to fill a void in their life instead of filling it with Jesus Christ. And they're really searching, but they get addicted, and then they end up with negative consequences in their life, and they can't figure out. Then they start, guess what? They start blaming other people, the government, or they blame, something going out, a family member or something, that rather than looking in the mirror. So the opposite of that is empowered by faith. But it's only people that, when we accept Jesus Christ, we're a new creature. We have new desires in our heart. Our heart condition is a lot different. And we're more, as we mature, we'll turn more and more to the Lord to guide us. So anyway, great question.
All right. I think that is all the questions that we have for today. I'm posting once again the link to the free gift that Rick is offering all of our folks who are registered today. So we thank you for that, Bobby. Rick, we'll turn it back over to you all to close this out.
Okay. Well, if you mind, just in the chat window, put in some kind of takeaway from this Q&A session today. And again, also in the chat window, or just raise your hand. Let's thank Rick Boxx for being our guest today. And I'm just so thrilled, my friend Rick, that's been here today. And this has been great discussion. And just as a reminder, is that our guest speaker tomorrow is Lee Truex, the president of Fellowship of Companies for Christ International. And I just want to simply say, may God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 3. Bye.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thank
God bless
you.
you all.